There's an aura so powerful that if you tap into it, I guarantee it will change all your social relationships with women and friends in a matter of weeks. I'm serious. It was one of the skills I unlocked that I believe accounted for 90% of my success with women and people I wanted to connect with. It's the celebrity aura. Let me explain better. Imagine this scenario. A man walking into a crowded restaurant. He's not tall, he's not handsome, he's not even well-dressed, but something about him turns heads. There's no flash, no spotlight, but there's presence. Now imagine another man, handsome, impeccably dressed, seemingly successful, and yet he walks into the same restaurant and goes unnoticed. What explains this? The question is a trap. What you just witnessed is one of the greatest social illusions of our time, the belief that visible value, money, beauty, material status is what truly determines your attractiveness and your ability to be noticed. But it isn't. It never was. What you saw there was what we call the celebrity effect, a silent but powerful phenomenon that operates between the lines of human perception. It has nothing to do with who you are on Instagram. It has to do with who you are in the invisible magnetic field of human interaction. The greatest trick society has taught us is to believe that value comes from outside, that you need to prove something to be respected, that you need to show something to be noticed, and that you need to achieve something to be desired. But this script, besides being tired, is completely wrong. It turns people into social ghosts, trapped in a loop of infinite validation. And most cruelly, it condemns the most intelligent, the most sensitive, and the most profound to silence because it teaches them to hide if they don't have the right attributes. This illusion of visible value perpetuates itself because it's easy to sell. The fashion, beauty, luxury car, and even self-help industries know this. They profit from the insecurity of those who believe that status is a trinket that can be bought. But the truth, and brace yourself because it hurts, is that no accessory survives contact with reality. Nothing you wear, flaunt, or say will hide what your body transmits when you enter a room. Your nervous system speaks before your mouth, and what it communicates is what people perceive, even if they can't name it. This is where the celebrity effect occurs, out of sight, within perception. Most people believe they need to look like something to be something, but it's just the opposite. You need to be something to not need to look like something. And that's what confuses people. Because the average man who walks into a restaurant and attracts attention isn't trying to attract attention. He's centered, he's calm, he's whole. And this integrity, emotional, physiological, postural, is felt by others as power. Not the aggressive, loud, approval-seeking power, but the silent, internal power that dictates the rhythm of the environment. Have you ever noticed how certain figures, be they artists, politicians, or even ordinary people, can attract attention even without opening their mouths? There's something there. Something invisible but present. It's the emotional weight a person carries. And it comes from their internal state. That's why two men can say the same thing, but only one is heard. That's why two women can be equally beautiful, but only one is remembered. That's why two people can walk into the same room, but only one shapes the atmosphere. Herein lies one of the greatest social contradictions. The person who tries the hardest to appear confident is precisely the one who conveys insecurity. Meanwhile, the person who relaxes the most in their own body, who takes up space without asking permission, who slows down their emotional frequency the most, is the one who becomes the magnet of the environment. This is the paradox of perceived status. The less you try to prove, the more you become proof. And this leads us to a fatal error that most people make when trying to increase their social value. Performance. The attempt to project what they don't feel. The disguising of discomfort with ready-made phrases, rigid postures, and mechanical interactions. The world is full of men with tight shirts and tense muscles that no one respects. It's full of women with expensive clothes and blank stares that no one desires. Because they lack the most important ingredient: physiological coherence. Your body, your breathing, and your heart rate are your greatest communicators. When they are out of sync with what you're trying to convey, you emit a signal of energetic falsehood. People won't be able to explain it, but they will feel it. And they'll drift away. The human brain is programmed to avoid inconsistency. We can even approach something beautiful. But we only connect with what feels genuine. And here's the point that undermines all shallow attempts to gain respect. The celebrity effect only comes from within. It's a physiological state, not a social trick. There's no point in memorizing phrases, copying gestures, or feigning self-confidence. Your body will betray you. Always. But if you understand the root of this, and this is the heart of what we're building here, you begin to realize that true seduction begins before speech. It begins when your body teaches the other person to perceive you as an emotional reference. Want an example? Remember when you entered a new, unsafe environment and saw someone who seemed completely at ease? That person, unknowingly, became the gravitational center of the space. They didn't speak louder, they didn't gesture anymore. They were simply calmer. And calm is power. Because calm teaches others how to feel. And this, in the social game, is the greatest kind of influence there is. This is the basis of the celebrity effect, being the emotional metronome of the environment, the one that dictates the rhythm of interaction, that modulates the frequency of conversations, that creates comfort where there was tension, that transforms the space without needing to occupy it. This kind of power cannot be bought. It cannot be imitated. It cannot be forced. It is built from within, from what your biology communicates when your system is in coherence. And that's what we're going to delve into now. Get in the flow with me. It's not in the eyes, not in the voice, not in what you wear. The true power of social magnetism emanates from a place most never consider: the chest. More specifically, the invisible field your heart emits into the environment. This isn't a poetic metaphor. It's pure science. And if you understood what we talked about in the previous chapter about physiological coherence, now you'll discover why certain people become gravitational centers of attention without saying a word. Because the secret isn't in what they show, but in what they transmit. In 2009, at the HeartMath Institute, a study led by Roland McCready revealed something surprising. The human heart generates the most powerful electromagnetic field in the body, which can be measured up to 1.5 meters around the person. This field vibrates differently, depending on your emotional state. When you're stressed, this field is chaotic, misaligned, and incoherent. When you're in deep calm, your body organizes itself, creating rhythmic, symmetrical patterns, and this, without anyone consciously noticing, affects the physiological state of those around you. The explanation lies in a phenomenon called social training, the unconscious tendency of human bodies to synchronize their heart, breathing, and even postural rhythms with the most emotionally stable individual in the room. This means that if you're truly calm, not faking it, the people around you will gradually regulate their own systems based on yours. They'll breathe like you, speak at your pace, feel what you feel. And this is the exact moment when you become magnetic, because you begin to be perceived as a source of emotional regulation. In practice, it's as if your body is saying, "Stay calm, everything is under control." And this, in the hyperstimulated world we live in, where everyone is tense, reactive, and anxious, is a biological oasis. People want to be around you without knowing why. But you do, because you are literally altering their neurophysiological state simply by your presence. This is influence. This is invisible value. This is the real celebrity effect. But here comes the paradox. The more you try to appear calm, the less so. Because true calm only arises when the body is in a state called cardiac coherence, an alignment between heartbeat, breathing, and hormonal fluctuations. And to achieve this state, it's not enough to simply think positive. You need to re-educate your body, create new patterns of posture, breathing, and internal timing. In other words, train your nervous system so that it becomes your energetic signature in the environment. Now, before you find all this too mystical, let's get back to biology. All your social behavior stems from a foundation, the state of your autonomic nervous system. This system regulates your heart rate, your muscle tension, and your hormone production. And it has two modes: the sympathetic, which prepares you for fight or flight, adrenaline, tension, acceleration, and the parasympathetic, which relaxes, regulates, and connects you, oxytocin, dopamine, digestion. When you're in sympathetic mode, your body is on alert. You're trying to control the environment. When you're in parasympathetic mode, the environment responds to your control. Most people live in a state of chronic alert. They talk fast, they laugh loudly, they gesticulate excessively, they seek approval. These are all manifestations of a body out of coherence, desperately trying to appear in control. But true control is silent. It's almost invisible. It happens when your heart is calm, your breathing is low and deep, and your body moves as if it belongs in space. That's the difference between filling the room and owning it. A simple example: walk into a cafe and observe. The person who draws the most attention isn't always the loudest speaker. It's the one who naturally occupies the space, the one who moves slowly, the one who seems too comfortable, almost intimate with the place. The secret isn't in the movement, but in the lack of it. Those who move little communicate that they don't need to rush. Those who speak little communicate that they don't need to prove themselves. Those who breathe deeply communicate that they're not afraid. And it's this silent communication that sets off the value radar in the people around them. You don't need to be beautiful, you need to be centered. You don't need to be rich, you need to be authentic. You don't need to be funny, you need to be at peace. Because peace is the rarest resource in social spaces, and those who possess it inevitably become the center of the room. But let's get practical. How do you train your body to enter this state? The answer lies in two tools you already have, but probably never use strategically: posture and breathing. Let's start with posture. Your muscles carry your emotional history. Tense people don't just feel anxiety, they carry it in their trapezius, jaw, and lower back. This continuous muscle tension sends signals to your brain that there's danger, and your body responds with more adrenaline. It's a vicious cycle. So before speaking, before smiling, before any interaction, relax your shoulders, loosen your jaw, unlock your hips, and slow down your gestures. This creates a pattern break in the environment. It's as if you're saying, with your body, here, the rhythm is different. Now breathing. Most people breathe into their chest, fast, short. This keeps the system alert. The secret lies in deep, silent abdominal breathing with long exhalations. The simple act of inhaling through your nose for 4 seconds and exhaling for 8 already activates the vagus nerve, responsible for putting your body into parasympathetic mode. Within minutes, your heart field reorganizes, and the environment begins to react to it. It's no coincidence that great leaders speak slowly, calmly, with a deep voice. It's biological. Voice frequency is affected by the level of muscular tension in the larynx, which in turn is affected by breathing. A calm body produces a commanding voice, and a commanding voice creates authority without needing to raise its tone. You might be thinking, but that seems like little. Breathing? Posture? That's all? Exactly. A mind addicted to complexity cannot accept that social power lies in simplicity. But simplicity is the hardest to master, because it requires self-knowledge, it requires training, it requires internal vigilance. But when you master these elements, something extraordinary happens. The environment begins to adapt to you. And here comes one of the most beautiful phenomena in social physics: spontaneous synchronization. An experiment with 32 metronomes, each oscillating independently, showed that, over the course of a few minutes, everyone became synchronized. Without communication, without command, simply by the influence of the collective on the individual rhythm. And do you know what this means socially? That in any human group, the most emotionally stable person sets the pace for the others. They become the metronome, the beat, the reference. This is the heart of magnetism. Being the emotional reference for a group. Not because you shout the loudest, but because you vibrate the lowest. Not because you impose yourself, but because you compose yourself. It's the opposite of performance, it's presence. And this presence has a smell, a sound, a temperature. People with high cardiac coherence emit different pheromone signals. Cleaner sweat, a more stable gaze, more oxygenated skin. All of this is felt subconsciously by others. The other person's body can't explain it. But it knows how to respond. And it responds with attention, closeness, trust. That's why after a few minutes, people start turning to you, smiling at you, inviting into circles where before you were just another person. You become the person they want around, because your presence is good for them. And that, ultimately, is what defines true social value. The ability to effortlessly generate well-being, to change the emotional temperature of a room with just your breath. This is what history's greatest seducers understood. Casanova wasn't the most handsome, but he was the most present. Cleopatra wasn't just beautiful, she was a presence that brought empires to their knees. This is the difference between aesthetic attractiveness and energetic attractiveness. The former is fleeting, the latter is memorable. And when you learn this, when you feel this, the social game changes. You stop seeking approval, you stop trying to impress, and you start leading, not by imposition, but by vibration. Now you understand, the heart of magnetism isn't charm, it's coherence. And this coherence begins in the body, it passes through the breath, and transforms into presence. The presence that doesn't need to be spoken loudly, because it speaks before you open your mouth. And it is with this foundation that we arrive at the next point. Because if you now understand what magnetizes, you still need to understand how to transform this state into dominance, how to make this effect repeatable, how to enter a space, any space, and be naturally invited to occupy it, how to create not just presence, but silent authority. And to do this, we need to go beyond energy. We need to enter behavior, the space, the non-verbal invitation that shapes social dynamics in your favor. Stay with me. It's not about occupying, it's about dominating. But not like a tyrant, not like a character, and much less like someone trying to impress. True dominance of a space happens when you become impossible to ignore without ever trying to be noticed. A paradox few understand and almost no one teaches. But it separates the men who ask permission to enter from those who are invited to stay. Imagine walking into a social setting, a bar, a meeting room, a party, and noticing that, within minutes, bodies lean slightly toward you, conversations slow down when you speak, and people you don't even know offer space around you. It's not because you arrived shouting. It's not because you commanded respect. It's because you emitted presence, a frequency of biological authority so subtle and so stable that people unconsciously reorganize the environment around you. This is the point where the celebrity effect ceases to be just magnetism and becomes emotional territory. The ability to influence not only how people perceive you, but how they move around you. You stop being just interesting, and you become inevitable. But how is this possible without money, without beauty, without external status? The answer lies in the silent logic that the body understands before the mind. Dominating space begins with the relationship between comfort and authority. And the greatest symbol of this, although demonized in shallow social discourse, is the famous manspreading. The idea of opening your legs, relaxing your arms, taking up more physical space than necessary. What seemed like an expression of uncontrolled machismo when observed through a biological lens is actually an unconscious strategy of territoriality. And it works, not because it imposes, but because it sends the signal that it's safe here. Of course, it's not about spreading your arms and legs like an insecure gorilla. That too is performance. True domination is almost intimate. It's the absolute relaxation of the body in a new environment, as if that space were rightfully yours. And that's felt. Because few things are rarer than someone completely comfortable where others are still adjusting. Those who arrive calmly where others arrive tense have already started winning. That's why the people we're most attracted to in social settings aren't those who talk loudly or display objects. They're those who treat the space as an extension of their inner world. They don't mold themselves into the environment. The environment molds itself to them. Because they don't demand space. They become the space. Remember the last time you saw someone leaning back in a chair as if they were in their own living room, even surrounded by strangers? You might have thought it arrogant, but deep down, you also found it magnetic. It was a body saying, "This place is already mine, even though I've just arrived." And this kind of message, when coherent with breathing and gaze, creates what we call a silent invitation. The silent invitation is the unconscious mechanism by which people allow you access to social territories that are closed to others. It's when groups open up to include you. When people introduce you to others without you asking. When space reconfigures itself around your presence, not because you are the center, but because you are the rhythm of the space. And herein lies a brutal principle. The calmer you are, the more agitation you generate around you. Because you become a contrast. In an anxious world, tranquility is the new power. And if this tranquility is accompanied by spatial comfort, you begin to be seen as someone who belongs. This is precisely why silent authority is so powerful. It doesn't need validation. It imposes itself through effortlessness, and the more you try to force it, the more you communicate neediness. The Zen master said, "Bamboo bends in the wind, but remains standing when the storm passes." This is the logic of the dominant body, flexible yet unshakable. Now, how to apply this without seeming snobbish? With a simple principle: invite others to relax too. And this starts with the way you look, speak, and position yourself. The look isn't one of superiority, it's one of familiarity. The speech isn't imposing, it's stable, and the body doesn't occupy as if it were expelling, it occupies as if it were embracing. When you convey this coherence, people don't feel threatened by your dominance, they feel embraced by it. And that's when you become irreplaceable. Because in the end, the space that matters most isn't physical. It's the emotional space you occupy within people. When they associate you with a sense of security, well-being, and authenticity, you cease to be a figurehead. You become an internal standard of reference. You become someone they seek out even when you're not there, because your presence has marked their experience, and that, my friend, is unforgettable. That's why, an hour after arriving in a room, you notice bodies moving closer to yours, questions being directed at you, smiles multiplying around you. It wasn't luck. It wasn't cheap charisma. It was emotional engineering. It was inner mastery overflowing with silent authority. It was the celebrity effect in its purest form, a physical, energetic, and behavioral phenomenon that transforms any room into a stage and you the centerpiece, even without the spotlight. And now, with all this in mind, I invite you to a final reflection. If all you've known as power until now has been noise, effort, performance, excess, then perhaps true power has always been in silence, in a calm body, in a steady gaze, in the breath that teaches others to relax. And maybe, just maybe, you don't need anything else to become irresistible. You just need, finally, to turn within. Because external dominance has always been a reflection of internal sovereignty. You don't need fame, you don't need millions, or a perfectly sculpted face. What you need is inner mastery. Because science doesn't lie. In any social space, those who regulate their own energy also regulate the environment. The true celebrity effect doesn't come from outside. It's born in the silence of your breath, the steadiness of your gaze, and the invisible magnetism your body transmits before you even open your mouth. And that's exactly why we created the Forbidden Manual, a brutal, direct audiobook, forbidden for those still trapped in superficial formulas. In it, you'll learn how to trigger desire in seconds, without cheap tricks, without theatrics, simply by understanding how the human body and female desire really work. If you've made it this far, it's because you're ready. Ready to stop seeking validation and start being validated. Ready to stop being just another person and become the one who will never be forgotten. Access the Forbidden Manual in the description now, because presence is built, desire is activated, and time, you've already wasted too much of that.